And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. The Canadian Coast Guard is a special operating agency within Fisheries and Oceans Canada. They work to ensure the safety of mariners in Canadian waters and protect Canada's marine environment and support Canada's economic growth through safe and efficient movement of maritime trade. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 1992.
We're in the search and rescue business, and we'd like to stay out of it as much as possible. That's our function, to try and promote safety and also expedite proper safety procedures when we can, and when we can't, look after search and rescue in an expeditious manner.
The auxiliary serves coastal areas year-round with some 30 volunteers based in Prince Rupert. And Brooks says in summer months they're kept busiest by people who simply haven't prepared themselves for the unexpected.
I think probably the main problem around here in the summer months is people not planning their fuel properly, running out of fuel. Some of the other problems are just a general lack of navigation, where people are, getting lost. We have people that get out on beaches, don't pay attention to tide, lose their boats, find themselves at 3 o'clock in the morning wondering how to get out of a situation where a tide flats, the tide's gone out for 2 miles, that kind of situation.
You find that since the Coast Guard Auxiliary started here in the late 70s that people have a better understanding and a better grasp of what they should be doing to keep out of trouble?
Somewhat, although we have a new crop of boaters every year that has really no concept of what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. Unfortunately, our school system here on the coast is not promoting boat safety or teaching anything about boat safety or navigation skills in the schools, and I think that'd be a very good place to start. So you get people that get a boat, it's a wonderful idea, they have no concept of weather, waves, or navigation, and they get in trouble.
Does the Coast Guard depend more on the auxiliary now than it did, say, 10, 15 years ago?
Yes, it did. There's been a lot of budget cuts, as we all know, and there is some discussion that the Coast Guard Auxiliary might be picking up most of the slack for search and rescue on the coast here. Most of our rescue here is in the winter. Last winter we had some spectacular rescues with young fellows running dive boats in very heavy seas. The first rescue that this boat was on was to rescue the Nemesis, which is around a 100-ton dragger going up on the rocks. We took a tow line to it. Our rescues are not typical in this country, and as more and more the Coast Guard resources are pulled back and we see ourselves getting involved with more of the heavier rescues, this unit is going to become much more important, and we're going to have more members. We're going to have to get into the fishing fleet and talk to the guys in the tug fleet.
Is this a problem that you see coast-wide with the Coast Guard being cut back? There's a natural expectation that the auxiliary is supposed to pull up the slack?
The auxiliary has basically volunteered to pick up the slack. The guys right through the whole coast are really keen. Up here, the real keeners are in the native villages, Hartley Bay up to Port Simpson, Masset. We have those fellows are always willing to go out. They always have been willing to go out in just horrendous conditions. And yeah, I think so.
The auxiliary's finest and most important tool is the Rainbow Responder, a twin-engine search and rescue vessel with inflatable rubber sides that give it stability and buoyancy in heavy seas. Brooks says it was one of many new pieces of equipment acquired over the past several years.
What's happened with the auxiliary is we started out in the late 70s with one loaned rubber vessel, smaller than this one here, from the Coast Guard to look after breakdowns around Vancouver. We had about 3,000 breakdowns a year down there. And over the last 10 years, 15 years, we've come from that single boat to having community dedicated boats like this that was paid for by the efforts of the community, bingos, raffles, etc. We have this one here in Rupert. We have another one in Souk. We have one in Victoria. We have a lot of owner-operator boats, but the main thing that has happened is the training level. We've gone from a few volunteers who were trained by fire departments, etc., to a large body of people now, around 500 that have been trained in Bamfield, in rigid hull inflatables. We've had courses put on to raise the level of competence. For example, we've had approximately 17 people a year for the last 2 years take master's courses for small boat masters up here at the college. I'd say we've come a long way.
Has the acquisition of the Rainbow Responder itself in, I think it was '87, made a big difference in the services you are able to provide?
It's made a lot of difference to what we can provide, and it's got an awful lot of people involved. There's a lot of people involved with this boat that don't have their own boats, but have an interest in search and rescue and community service, and it's gotten to those people. Right now there's a program with the United Fishermen and Allied Workers Union to get a lot more commercial fishermen involved. 2 years ago there was a decision in the Ontario Supreme Court which made workmen's compensation a provincial matter and put workmen's compensation onto the water as far as water safety with fishing vessels. And this has been implemented in BC. I think we'll see a lot more fishing vessels become involved because of that Workmen's Compensation Board decision, which is now run by the province.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thanks for staying with us. The modern life jacket is generally credited to the Inspector of Lifeboats at the Royal National Lifeboat Institution in the UK, Captain John Ross Ward. He created a cork vest in 1854 to be worn by lifeboat crews for both weather protection and buoyancy. Let us return to the archives as Ed Brooks shares more about personal flotation devices.
Perhaps the single most important safety device on every boat is the life preserver. It's not always the simple red vest you see in small pleasure craft.
Flotation devices are an essential part of water safety. Right here we have a number of devices and they have different purposes. This one here, the life ring, gets you floating. You throw it in the water, you get inside it, you flip it over your head. This is for a smaller person. There's a keyhole type life jacket which is used in the States. They are not approved here because they are extremely hard to get on. So when you're getting a life ring, get one of these. Here we have a thermal suit which will give you some flotation and keep you warm. The second factor in flotation devices is this water here. Your chances of survival if you've been in more than 10 minutes or 20 minutes are almost nil due to hypothermia. You notice this jacket, it's got a whistle. Sound devices are important on this type of thing. Now here we have two life jackets. This is an older type. A lot of boats have these. Here we have another type of device, which is much more modern. And this one's for a child. And one thing that's really important in a child's device is that it fits the child. If it is too large, the child will slip right through and you'll lose them. The other thing is this has flotation in the back here. This is to raise the child's head. If anyone's unconscious, it'll raise the head and flip them in the water. Some of the older devices, which you find on things like the BC ferries, don't flip you over. And one of the greatest causes of death in the last war was devices that didn't flip people over in the water. Right here, we have a survival suit. People that are seriously engaged in the commercial fishery and doing a lot of boating offshore should have one of these. Again, it has a whistle, sound signal. This one has a little strobe. You should also practice getting into it. Most boats sink in about 1 to 3 minutes. And here we have approximately 10 seconds. The suit is done. If you look at the suit, there's a flotation on the back that raises the person's head. Incredible. There it is. This man has practiced.
But there's more to safety equipment than just a life jacket.
The small vessels regulations requires that all pleasure boats that operate on the coastal waters require certain safety equipment aboard their boat. As you can see, one of the main things is your life jackets, suits, some sort of flotation devices. That consists of a number of different items. Another item required on your boat is a bailer, a bilge, something that you can use to get the water out of the boat if for some reason it comes in. Another device you require is if your engine or something breaks down, you need something that can help take care of you in those type of situations, either be an oar or an anchor. If you have a fire aboard, you must have fire extinguishers, a bailer, a water bucket, something like that to take care of the fire. You're also required to have some sort of sound signaling or some sort of signaling device on your vessel. They can consist of flares, whistles, an EPIRB, VHF radio, those type of things. As you can see, this equipment is very important to have aboard your boat. And to find out exactly what equipment you require for your size of vessel, you can contact your local Coast Guard or Coast Guard Auxiliary to pick up a version of the Small Boat Vessels Handbook to ensure that you have the proper safety gear when you go out on the water.
Perhaps the mistake made most often by boaters is forgetting to take along enough fuel, but safety precautions must also be taken when gassing up.
Fueling accidents have taken an awful lot of lives in British Columbia. One thing you have to do when you take on fuel is first get any passengers out of your boat. Next thing you have to do is make sure that you've got some kind of good grounding. There's no open fires, no cigarettes in the boat when you take on fuel. Remember that fuel vapors go downhill. That's why garages, where there's a lot more fuel for land cars, have no problem because the vapors dissipate. In a boat, they get trapped. The other problem with fuel is propane. Propane, again, sinks. One spark and you're off. The great boom. One thing to remember, if you're in an enclosed boat, put on your blowers for at least 5 minutes after fueling.
In the end, though, there's much more to safety on the high seas than just gassing up carefully and carrying flares and life vests. As this incident proves, you never know when an accident is going to happen.
These. Holy. Oh, he snagged his boom and the other guy's rigging. Tore a block right off.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Canada led the world in the development of early skating rinks, and the first prepared outdoor commercial rink in the country was opened in Montreal in 1850. The first covered rink in the world was built in Quebec City in 1852. The early rinks were built with natural ice. Large sheds provided the skater with shelter from the wind and snow. Let us return to the archives to bring you this story from 1992.
I guess the most critical reason is that there's a shortage of ice time for the young people in town and those that are using the arena for ice sports. Other communities like, for instance, Kitimat, they have 2 arenas and their population is actually less than ours, and it's busy all the time. And at this time, there's some youngsters being turned away because the arena just can't accommodate them.
The committee's first hurdle was to convince the city Terrace needed a second ice surface. Last year, City Council decided to fund a feasibility study, and it brought out 4 possible designs. The first scheme portrayed an ice surface adjacent to the present arena with the addition of a leisure sheet of ice. Royce Condi was the architect of the plan and thinks the leisure sheet is a nice touch.
Now, a leisure sheet of ice is known today as an area for small children, parents. They might have a child playing hockey in the ice surface, but they might also have a 2-year-old learning to skate with the assistance of a parent.
The only change to the second scheme was the repositioning of the leisure sheet to the north instead of the west. but it's an idea not being seriously considered because it took away parking space. But the third choice was completely different. It involved taking a chunk of land out of the hill below the arena on Calum Street and putting the arena into the gap. A big step, but an appealing one.
Some nice things about this was that along Calum Street we could have glazed in the west wall with a canopy, and you would have had direct visual contact with the ice surface and Calum Street. It would have been quite inviting to the public. However, the scheme also does take away from a rather pleasant earth bank that's grassed in the summer and looks quite attractive. It will demolish about or change about 2/3 of that earth bank. It will take up that kind of property.
It also added about 15 to 25% to the cost of the facility, so it was back to the drawing board to find a plan which would appeal to everyone.
Well, after the second sheet of ice committee reviewed schemes 1, 2, and 3, Paul, there were some weaknesses in those schemes, and scheme 4 was an attempt to rectify those weaknesses. And one of the main points of scheme 4 is that a new lobby is created between the two arenas. That joins the leisure sheet ice area and the existing arena. Also the existing lobby area, the kitchen and washroom facilities are extensively renovated. A new stairway to the banquet facility is also provided. The road in the front of the present arena is lowered down to the ice level.
The cost of the new arena, including renovations, site preparation, and tests, comes in around $4.8 million. Now that a design is in place, the next step for the second sheet committee is to present the idea to Terrace residents. The committee wants council to put the issue to referendum by the spring.
You know, Terrace is the hub of the north, and as the hub in the center of the northwest area, it's our duty really to provide the facilities and the amenities for the north.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
The evolution of the ice skate to the modern steel blade passed through several stages. Skates made entirely of iron were introduced in the 17th century. Steel skates, fastened with screws and clamps to the wearer's shoes, were first made in the 1850s. In this final segment of Open Connection, we bring you this story about the Terrace Skating Club in 1992.
Terrace Skating Club President Julia Mitchell has been with the club for 5 years, and she's amazed by this year's turnout.
It's wonderful. We have, I think it's between 57 and 64 boys, which we've never had before. I think it does show the general trend for people to want to skate. However, a lot of them are in there to improve their skating ability so that their hockey improves. And the CFSA, the Canadian Figure Skating Association, is working together with hockey, ringette, and other ice users to try and amalgamate skating as a general sport, because one does help the other.
But boys aren't the only one involved in skating. It's a very popular sport for many young ladies. In the beginning, everyone starts out in the Can Skate program. It's then broken down to other levels which are based on age and ability, such as Can Skate 1, Can Skate 2, with progression into Can Figure.
Club's got it built from, and it's your basics: forwards, backwards, stopping, turning, edges.
Canadian Figure Skating Association level programs, CFSA, are available through the skating club on both junior, intermediate, and senior levels. Here they work on patch and figures. Mitchell explains the difference.
Patch is the skating terminology for when you see the skaters doing their figures 8 or what looks like a triple figure 8, that's their patch or their figures. And that's what sometimes blows a kid in competition if they're not concentrating enough. And then your free skate is when you put together all your jumps, spins, turns, and everything that you've learned and put it to music and choreograph it and make yourself a solo.
Many girls at this point are competing or begin competing. An honorary member of the Terrace Skating Club and skating judge, Monica Lassard, says skaters have a lot of opportunities to compete. She says there are so many competitions mainly because of the large region.
There's a lot of competitions, a lot of test dates, and then the section itself has a lot of competitions too. So we're kept quite busy. And our region goes from Prince Rupert to Whitehorse to the Alberta border to 100 Mile House. So it's a big area.
And sometimes skaters do go further than the regionals.
We have had some skaters who've competed sectionally. You've got, you start off with regionals, you go into sections, then you've got your divisionals, and then you've got your nationals. We had one skater almost make it to sectionals. She was an alternate this year, but we have very few seniors right now. And it's not until you get up into that senior category that you've learned enough to be able to compete in sections.
But it's a long, hard road full of trials and tribulations. And skater Vanessa LeBlanc says it's important to keep going when the going gets rough.
If you're maybe having trouble with a jump or spin, you have to just always think to yourself, I can do it. And just try your best at it.
LeBlanc says one of her favorite ways to practice her jumps is with the harness. It's new for the club, only a year old, and she says it helps build confidence when attempting singles, doubles, or even triples. There is a payoff for those skaters who do well at the regionals, a solo at the annual Skating Carnival. LeBlanc says last year she placed second at the regionals for her category, which gave her a solo at the 1992 Carnival Capers.
You need a much better boot, you need a lot more support, you need a better blade, and when you're really getting up there, you probably end up needing 2 pairs for your patch and for your free skate.
To help alleviate the cost of competitions, test fees, and other expenses, the club does a lot of fundraising.
This club in particular does a lot of fundraising, and that's what brings our costs down, because being up here in the north, we have traveling to overcome before anything else. So we fundraise for just about all year.
Mitchell says the Terrace Skating Club is one of the few which does so much in the way of fundraising. She says they look to the community for support for a number of reasons. But she says now that support has to come in the way of a new arena.
If we had a second sheet of ice, we could put more programs on, we could get more coaches, and we could put into effect a lot of the skating programs that we really don't have the time or the ice right now to do. Then we could probably get a lot more up at that level.
Well, there'd be more time for the kids. We could offer more programs. We could offer a can power skate program for those hockey players. We could offer an adult program for the adults, a kids skate for the little guys. We can have just all kinds of different things for the kids to do.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.